Okay, if you'll take your seats, we'll get started. Still can't hear it. Well, that's because a lot of folks are talking. Yes, start recording. Okay, folks, if we can have your attention. Okay, I want to make sure that we can all be heard. Can you hear me okay now that? Okay. All right, I'm going to shout into the microphone. We'll see how that works. Oh, much better. Good. Good evening. My name is Lori Warnock. I'm chairman of the Select Board in the town of Hampstead. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. This is a lovely turnout. I say that hoping it will be a lovely turnout. I'm very pleased to see so many members of the community here. I'd like to introduce a few people. In addition to our legislative team, we have Senator Regina Birdsall here, Representative Lily Walsh, our neighboring Representative Ken Weiler from Kingston, Representative Mark Pearson, and Representative Joe Guthrie. That's our team. We also have a representative from Atkinson. Sorry about that. Thank you, hon. Okay, and on the dais, I want to introduce our participants tonight. So first up will be Dr. Marissa Henn, who's the Deputy Commissioner of DHHS. We've also got Justin Lucer, who is the new, I'm still giving you new, I know it's been almost 3 months now, so, the new CEO of Hampstead Hospital. We've got Steve Finnegan, who is the COO of Hampstead Hospital. We have Jerry Roca, who is the director of the Sununu Youth Services Center. We have Dr. Samantha Morin, who is the clinical director. You're going to raise your hands because we're not in order here. Ted Cupper, who is the director in the Division of Public Works. We've got Jerry Guerrero from HDR and Tommy Sinclair from HDR. Those are the architecture firm. And I think that just leaves Tim Smith, project manager, Division of Public Works. So I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I believe we're going to start with Dr. Henn, and you're going to give us sort of an overview of where things stand. We will take questions during the presentation. I don't want you to feel that you have to wait until everyone, if there's something in particular that you want to address, please come to the podium, state your name, and that you are a town resident, and then ask your questions. We will try to keep comments limited to just a few minutes so that we can get through everyone's concerns and also the presentations from the panel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I think it's on?
Yeah.
I'll speak loudly. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting myself and our team here tonight. My name is Marissa Henn. I have the privilege of serving as Deputy Commissioner at the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. And since the state took ownership of the magnificent 90-plus acre campus at Hampstead Hospital, I've spent a lot of time in this community and just appreciate what a vibrant place it is, filled with deeply caring people and very dedicated officials. And I think your participation here tonight is evidence of that. So our purpose in being here tonight is to update you on some of the activity that is underway on that state-owned campus and to seek your input. So to start, I think it's always helpful to lay out just the high level on what is happening, since it can be a little confusing. And I think it's best by describing these 3 separate but linked services that are located on this campus. So the first facility is Hampstead Hospital, a facility providing psychiatric inpatient care to New Hampshire youth. And as I said, the state purchased that facility, that property, in 2022. It is New Hampshire's sole psychiatric inpatient facility for children and adolescents. The second service is a psychiatric residential treatment facility, a PRTF for short, that is called East Acres. It is located within the existing hospital, and it provides support for youth who have complex behavioral health needs and trauma, but they don't require that same clinical level of support as a hospital. As I said, that was opened subsequent to the purchase, so that was opened in 2023. And third is a facility that's not yet built, but is the main reason we are here tonight, and it's the Youth Development Center, which will serve up to 18 detained and committed youth. We have architectural, public works, and facility leaders here tonight to update you on the design, construction, operation of that facility, and seek your feedback. I will leave the updates on all of the details of these three co-located entities to the folks who are much deeper in the operational day-to-day activities than I am. What I want to acknowledge is that I know the community has been concerned and frustrated, in particular by some of the incidents that have occurred at the hospital and PRTF that have required law enforcement and EMS support. You have extraordinary first responders in this community, and they have supported us and our patients in times of need. Our goal is to have them visiting our facility as little as possible. Under Justin Lucer's leadership and the hard work of our extraordinary clinicians who work at the facility, it appears that we are moving into a more stable period. It's been a much quieter month, and my calls with Will Warnock and Bob Kelly and some of our other friends in the first responder community have been a little less frequent. That's not by accident. We've implemented many changes, and Justin will be able to talk about those today. We've invested a lot of money. We've invested in infrastructure, in staffing, in training, and programming to make sure that while some of these youth have really challenging behaviors, we need to manage them well within our four walls. We will continue to provide safe and quality care without interruption, and we're confident that our capabilities will continue to strengthen based on an important announcement that was made this morning. And so that important announcement that I want to acknowledge is that this morning, the state brought forward and the governor and executive council approved a contract to work with Dartmouth Health to provide clinical services at Hampstead Hospital. State-of-the-art services modeled on our successful adult psychiatric facility in Concord, New Hampshire Hospital. And so that will take effect when the current contract expires. It'll go into effect July 1st. And I think it will continue to strengthen all aspects of our infrastructure. And it's a really important step forward as we look to expand and enhance the clinical capabilities that we have on that campus, and the opportunity for that campus to help train mental health professionals to be deployed statewide. And so let me just close by expressing my thanks to especially to your committed local officials. Folks, as I said, like Lori Warnock, Joe Guthrie, Bob Kelly, Will Warnock, these have become people that much as the concerns they're bringing to me are very serious and urgent, they are incredibly dedicated public servants for whom professionalism and getting results is top notch. I want to particularly recognize Senator Birdsell, whose leadership in the legislature to ensure that this town's needs are being heard and resources deployed are key. One of the things we'll talk about tonight are fences that are going into, I'm sorry, I'll talk louder. One of the things that we'll talk about tonight are some fences and gates being deployed in part.
Nobody can hear you.
Oh. No one can hear. Okay, pull it closer. All right. Sorry, thank you. I'm sorry that you had to wait that long to say that. So the last thing that I will just say, and then maybe we'll really shout into the mic, is just to thank you again. Town officials, Senator Birdsell, lots of improvements coming to that campus that we'll hear more about tonight. Let me just say in closing, our goal as a state is to be a good neighbor. Ooh, now it's really on, thank you. We want you to feel proud to live near this campus and to appreciate the services that are being provided here that are not available anywhere else. I grew up alongside the adult psychiatric facility in Concord, New Hampshire Hospital. I spent my middle school years volunteering, reading books to kids at the Youth Development Center when it existed there. And it was a very formative experience for me. My hope is that this community comes to take pride in the facility that's there, that it's not only tolerated, but it's actually a source of pride, recognizing that what is available in Hampstead is truly not available anywhere else in the state. And we know that this is a community that cares about its own and about its most vulnerable, and look forward to truly building this Children's Center of Excellence with you. So with that, I will, I think, hand it over to Justin to give some updates more detailed on safety improvements on that campus.
Sure. Just a reminder, if you could make sure you've silenced your cell phones. It's something I always forget to ask, but we are also on Zoom tonight, and so there are some folks that are participating remotely, and we'll try to keep them in the conversation as much as we can. Justin?
All right, good evening.
Justin, it may be better for you to come up to this microphone. I think. Sorry, Tom.
Hi, good evening. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Justin Lucer. I'm the new CEO at Hampstead Hospital. From New Hampshire, born and raised from the seacoast, Portsmouth. The past 24 years of my career are spent in healthcare in New Hampshire, working at Parkland Hospital, which is right around the corner, Portsmouth Regional, and Frisbee. Primarily focused on behavioral health care, and primarily focused on a lot of the crisis that we've seen in every hospital's ED, with children waiting for months, weeks to months, adults often waiting, a week to 2 weeks to find placement and just residing in EDs. So when this opportunity came across my desk, I felt that it was something that I was very passionate about. We've worked closely with Hampstead in the past as HCA Healthcare, and had great experiences, and I felt called is a little bit dramatic, but certainly I felt that this was a right role for me. Been in this position for just about 4 months now. Certainly ups and downs and challenges, but I think at this point.
Sorry, I can't hear you on the Zoom.
Oh.
Maybe if we bring this over.
Maybe you should sit at the table and shout.
All right. Maybe I can try to project. Can you all hear me? Okay.
And they won't hear you on Zoom.
They won't pick up.
Yeah,
I won't try to project. Use my phone.
but maybe they can point that one to it. Could that one? Hit that one.
All right. How's that?
Good. Pull it close. There you go.
Nothing to ease you into it and some technical difficulties. That's all right. So as I said, I've been working in healthcare for the majority of my career. Very passionate about the state of New Hampshire. Any part of my success that I've had in expanding healthcare, expanding success for behavioral health, has been able to partner with community agencies. I think if you ask around about me, I've been a good partner with agencies in the Seacoast, in Greater Stratford County, in Derry, and have tried to work collaboratively. So that's sort of where the approach that I'm coming at tonight. I'm happy that there's so many people here who care about Hampstead Hospital, and also to address some of the concerns that I'm sure you all have as well. It's no surprise, anybody who's watched the news has seen that there have been ups and downs in the past few months at Hampstead Hospital. We've worked hard to address those things, and I do feel we are on the right path. One of the things that I would say is that the staff at Hampstead Hospital, all of them, this is not lip service by any means, is passionate about caring for those kids. They want to ensure that kids get to a placement in a timely manner, that they're treated and they're discharged. The difference between adults and kids in the state is there are a lot more resources for adults. So many times we end up hanging on to kids for longer than we'd like, waiting for disposition. And as kids end up getting stuck in a hospital, some of those behaviors we see escalate. So there is an arc to a hospitalization where people get better, and then some of those behaviors will increase as they can't be discharged to an appropriate placement, and they're sort of stuck in the hospital. That is not an excuse, it's just in terms of how do we manage, how do we pivot as a hospital to be able to address those needs, ensure that the kids are safe at the hospital, that they're getting the treatment that they need, that staff is safe, and that the community feels secure in that. I will say that as we leave tonight, there's nothing magic that I'm going to say that everyone's going to, I mean, it would be nice if I said something great, everyone clapped, and we all believed that things were going to turn the corner. But that's not the expectation that I think everyone's going to leave with, and that's okay. What I do think will show that is time and increased efforts that we've put into Hampstead and increased transparency that we've communicated with the community at large, with the state, to say, here are the issues we're facing, here are our struggles, and here's how we're looking to address them. So some of the recent struggles that we've had is at times a general disorganization in response to emergency codes. Emergency codes in a hospital are when patients are acting out, maybe periods of self-harm, maybe a desire to harm others. We've organized that in a manner and put a team called a PERT team, which is a psychiatric emergency response team, so that when that behavior happens, we can respond quickly and in an organized fashion, and also have a plan in place so that behavior does not escalate again, and we can continue treatment for those kids, give the treatment for those kids that they need to get better. I feel like we're at a place at Hampstead where our physician bench is strong. We have strong leaders in Dr. Brown and Dr. Baudet. We have increased our safety and security staff to, at times, be able to be stationed on the unit, but also to be nimble and be able to move around. We have increased security from the environment of care, inclusive of plexiglassing stations so kids cannot access more dangerous items. We had a Homeland Security come in after the event at New Hampshire Hospital. They did a survey for us around how we can improve the overall campus. One of those, which Marissa mentioned and championed by Senator Birdsell, is that perimeter fence, which will go around the hospital to decrease elopements. Also, that fence will be primarily hidden within the trees, so it will not be an eyesore to the general community. The front, we plan on putting a gate with a gatehouse, and to staff that 24/7 with a security guard, and on the back entrance, a key swiped gate as well. We are just in the process of getting bids for those. I'll be happy to share with those on whatever communication in terms of plans for those, so we can get community buy-in as well. Furthermore, electronic card swipes for all of our patient areas to come in. And also a higher level of screening on what patients we can care for and the service we can deliver to them. So oftentimes we have gotten stuck with patients who may not meet a hospital level of care, but we've taken them in because there's no disposition for them to go. And without a plan in place, those kids' treatment generally is not as successful as we would have liked. So we are in the period of getting organized and straightening things out. I will tell you, again, as I said in the beginning, although the Zoom callers probably didn't hear me, it's been a little bit bumpy. But some of those bumps have led to us to move forward. So it's been a bumpy road, but a road that's moving forward and smoothing out. Some of the trends which Marissa mentioned in the past month, we've had less calls to police, which is not a pattern yet, but it's trending in that way. We've had productive meetings with Chief Kelly and his department, which we'll continue to have. And we've also had meetings with the local community mental health centers, CLM.
I have a question.
Sure.
Police department, are you going to be compensated for the extra cost and the time? If you're going to put a detention center in here, how many more cops does Hampstead have to hire?
Okay.
Would you want a detention center in your backyard?
Please remember that if you have a question, to come up to the podium so that everyone can hear the question. The question was regarding compensation.
Is there going to be a question part?
Yes, as I mentioned,
Okay, I didn't know if this was just going to be, we're just listening to everybody.
you're welcome to come up.
In the church, it was fairly like open-ended with questions.
And I want it to be open-ended too, because I don't want this to be, a presentation from the panel, and then you have to wait to ask your questions.
I'd be more than happy to.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is,
Yes.
if you're going to put a detention center in here, Are you going to compensate the town of Hampstead for the extra police? I know you say that state police are supposed to be able to come and service the hospital, but what I was reading was it took them almost an hour before they could actually even get here. So the Hampstead police have to be called. What are you gonna do for the town as far as helping us with the costs? I mean, my taxes are higher enough as it is.
So currently, the state is providing a payment in lieu of taxes of about 170 some thousand. I think it's $178,000 a year that we're committed to. And Senator Birdsell can speak to this a little bit more. Has been advocating for an increase. She has a bill right now to increase that higher. So that's the current arrangement.
I just question that you're coming into a small town like this, which we do not have the resources as some of the cities, and you're putting a youth detention center in here. It's just a major concern for me.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. Thanks for your question.
Hi, my name's Dottie. I'm a resident. What's the acuity level? And what's going to be the client's staff ratio? And do you not take admissions if you're not up to par on your ratio?
Within Hampstead Hospital?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
So-
the whole campus.
Yes, so let me speak for Hampstead Hospital. So yes, we have implemented an acuity tool, which measures the level of acuity on every unit. It is an established tool that other hospitals use. We use that tool to look at our census and what we can accommodate. We have had to cap our census at times due to heavier acuity, and also move patients around and screen patients coming in greater, so that it doesn't disrupt the majority. One patient doesn't take away from the treatment of the majority of the other patients. So those are sort of generalities in terms of how we run that hospital. But we hold census. The census is it is not a rainstorm of admissions coming in. We're thoughtful around how we manage
Well,
that
I have
acuity.
50 years' experience working in hospitals and psych areas. And yes, on paper it looks good, but it never happens. We've been in a shortage of healthcare workers since I was 30 years old, okay? That's 40 years ago. And I don't see how that's gonna change. Yeah, you can hire and stuff, but, you know, it doesn't change. It's gonna get worse, because the baby boomers are retiring.
We have not at Hampstead Hospital had a hiring problem. What we have had,
That's comical.
okay.
You get multiple job fairs that nobody shows up to, and you talk all the time about how you don't have enough employees. But that was before you came.
I'm happy to answer all questions that kind of come up front.
I could keep going.
I'm happy to do that, and certainly take criticism. I just want to be able to answer questions one at a time.
Sure. We're abutters, we're neighbors.
Sure.
So we are dealing with this firsthand.
We live on Faith Drive. The hospital abuts my backyard. She is across the street from me. We have two children. I have two children. She has 3 children. They're all younger. And I was at the meeting in September and expressed a lot of my concerns about safety. Ted was the only person who was interested in communicating with the residents about safety and what was going on. My 12-year-old son literally hears sirens now and goes and locks every door and window in our house because he is petrified somebody is going to run through the woods at Hampstead Hospital.
My 12-year-old son also won't stay home alone by himself because he's scared to death due to what you have done there.
And I told you this in September, and Marissa, you said, oh, it'll be fine, everything's going to be great. Nothing has been better. Everyone talked about communication. I've gotten emails, I sent Ted an email, and I've gotten sent to some media coordinator who has alleviated me with every siren call that don't worry, everything is okay, everything is under control. Never has some sort of reverse 911 happened for the people who live abutting the Hampstead Hospital property immediately when there's been an emergency or when there's been a breakout. That is super concerning to me since my children are home, and I would like to know if somebody who is unsafe is running around in my backyard. Additionally, in the emails I got in November, I was told that the fence was going to be measured and installed So when is that happening? Because as the winter went by, nothing was happening, nothing was installed. I have an email saying it was going to happen. It didn't happen. All I've seen gone up is a lamppost to get more lighting down at the bottom of the driveway. That's it. I don't really care about your lighting at the bottom of the driveway, although I'm sure it's helpful when you're trying to find a kid who's escaped. Additionally, if I'm a parent of a resident and my kid has broken out of your hospital, I can't even imagine how those parents are feeling.
Would you like a detention center in your backyard? Because the next time they pick up the cops, maybe we can drop them off on your property and you can see how you feel about it.
Yep. And you talk about
It doesn't feel very good.
No.
I moved to Hampstead because it was a safe, great community. I wanted the school system, I wanted the town, I wanted the community, and now I couldn't sell my house if I tried.
And you talk about a bumpy road? What
This isn't a bumpy road.
What bump are we waiting
It's a
for?
train wreck.
What happens to our property values?
Right. But I don't feel respected at all. You talk about transparency, there's no transparency. The town asked us for all of our
I'm a real
emails.
estate agent. I know this.
The town has asked for all of our emails so that you can communicate to us and be transparent.
I've
Not
gotten one email. One.
I didn't even
One.
get an email about this meeting. I found out through the community. You would think it is in a butter, we'd be informed. Nothing.
Let's give them an opportunity to respond. I want to
So they can sling some more shit at us and see what sticks?
I want you to respond, Marissa, honestly. I don't want the bullshit about gorgeous and lovely and everything's great. Really respond. Don't blow it up.
Because let's pretend it's in your backyard.
And I said that to you in September, and
Because it
nothing
doesn't
has
feel
felt
good.
better.
It doesn't feel good.
Okay, thank you.
No, Justin, I think Marissa should respond first. What's the question?
I mean,
Are you kidding me? What's
Well,
the
you just shared a
question?
lot, so let me-
What's going on with the fence? What's with the
Yeah, yeah.
transparency? How are we supposed to feel safe as residents
yeah.
who are abutting the immediate property? Those are the questions.
I'm a child prison.
so the fences that you're referring to that were installed in the fall,
Were they installed? I haven't seen any fencing.
the fences that you're referring to were for recreation areas and they have been installed.
I'm talking about the perimeter fencing. When I
Not
emailed
recreation.
when I emailed the guy in November, I asked about the perimeter fencing. I don't care if there's recreational fencing. I want the perimeter fence.
So the perimeter fencing, we're actually prepared to talk with you about and share images tonight of where.
When will it be installed? That's the question.
We are working on that right now, but the
That's
fences.
a
That's
horrible
not an
answer.
And did you guys also take into account the damage that was gonna do to the property, because the drainage that fence is gonna do?
Also, have you looked into the water issue? Because in September, we brought that up, that we have a
Right.
massive water issue
So are
in
you guys gonna
Hampstead.
fix all these problems?
Architects and the DPW are going to talk about those.
But are they gonna fix the problem or just talk? Are we
So
gonna have
it's
lip
hard-
service, or are we gonna
Right,
fix
so
it?
let's jump to it. Answer the questions. I don't need to hear about Justin's background. You're great. That's lovely. I'm sorry you've walked into the shitstorm. Like, this is where we're at
So
here.
one of the things that I think some of your fellow townspeople might also appreciate is if we can actually provide the updates on the project.
Right, but
that-
you're not. We're hearing about how lovely you think Hampstead community is and Justin's background. Like, we've got a certain amount of time. I gotta leave for work at 8 o'clock. Let's fast track this shit.
Do you want to move on to the?
So I think, so again.
I mean, I'll be
think-
honest, Marissa, I don't think anyone here is truly concerned about, like, the people that are gonna be in the hospital that aren't, the criminals that are moving in, I think is what the jury of the people is here are scared about. It's not the hospital and the people that need the care. It's the criminals that we're bringing in and the wall that's being put up to protect them.
100%, yeah.
I think that is what we're all here for. So you guys can probably stop all the, I'm so-and-so, this is where my background is, and get to it.
Let's just get to the meat of it, because you haven't answered any of our questions since September.
Because otherwise just wasting all of our
The
time.
questions still are here. And the other big issue is when you're building this massive youth detention center, have you looked into the water system in our town? What's
So
going to
these
happen
are
to us as residents if our water dries up, if we have no wells because you've sucked it all up top?
Okay, so these are exactly the topics we're hoping to get to tonight.
Worked up. Trust me, I feel your frustration.
We want to talk with you about all these things, about the fencing, about the water, about the plans for the secure facility.
Is our taxes gonna go down because we lost 50, 80 grand in property value? Are our taxes gonna decrease because of that? Are we gonna get more police officers? Because obviously, our police force is not prepared to support this hospital. Are we gonna have an extra police officer that's paid by the state to support this facility that's been done? I live 1 block away. Am I gonna get a property tax devaluation? Because because now if I want to go sell my property in 2 years, my buyer, I'm a real estate agent. My name is Ian Handel. If you want to hire me to sell your house, I'm here. But my property, if I go to 2 years from now and I want to move to a cul-de-sac neighborhood and I want to sell my property, now I'm taking 50, 80 grand less on my sale value. Any buyer who comes to my property, I know this, I've been doing this for years. They're going to say, Google, 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 what's there? Oh, there's a child prison 180 feet from your property. I'm not buying that. Are you kidding me? Is there an alarm system at the property?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna ask.
I mean, that's ridiculous. Why is this coming to Hampstead?
I'm gonna ask that will you please step to the podium when you have a comment. I welcome your opinion, but I think
everyone heard it.
I want, well, not everyone on the phone, and they have. So I want to make sure that we keep this a productive conversation. Marissa, can we move on to addressing some of the specific questions that were just asked before we ask any more
I
questions?
think in terms
okay?
of taxes, one of the things actually that Senator Birdsell did that was very helpful, and many of your local representatives were part of this, was bringing in the Department of Revenue Administration to present on an analysis of how other facilities, the state prison, county facilities, the current YDC, the Student Youth Services Center in Manchester, have affected the tax base. And a lot of analysis has gone into that to assess what the impacts have looked like. Essentially, what it boiled down to is that while there are some times when adjustments are made by the Department of Revenue Administration, that's actually been pretty minimal. That for the most part, the community in Manchester, where SYSC is currently located, has not had any impact to their property values. And in many cases have actually been pretty positive neighbors for that facility. I would recommend that we keep...
A child prison is positive to the property values?
So I'm going to recommend, since there are a lot of questions about YDC, that we move to talking about the design of that facility, including the security features, since I think there's a lot of questions about it.
Did you just say that putting a child prison next to a property increases property values?
I did not say that. I said that the neighbors have been supportive of the property, that there's actually been a positive relationship and no negative impact on their property values.
I don't
And that's
find that to
fact.
be
That's
believable.
somewhere we could find that. That's a
How
fact.
could that be believable?
That was a question. If that's a fact, that
It was
it's
presented
positive,
to
it's
Senator
been
Birdsell's
surveyed.
YDC Impact Commission. We're happy to share the minutes from those meetings.
No, and you should.
I want to just share, if you'll excuse me for just
Yeah.
a second. I want to just share with some comments about the compensation, because as we've said from the Board of Selectmen, two key points for us are community safety and compensation for the burden on services. Now, as you know, Hampstead Hospital, as a private entity, was one of our largest tax revenue sources. The first year, so in 2022, we received $131,000 from the state in compensation for that lost revenue. In 2023, Senator Birdsell put in legislation and we received $178,000. She has put in legislation which has made it through the Senate, which has made it through House Finance, and will go to the House for a vote, and that will compensate us in this year for $191,000. So the value of our lost revenue has increased with scale over the past 3 years. However, as a select board member, I can tell you the fact that we have to continually put in a piece of legislation and go through that process to be compensated is concerning to me. There are two other ways that that can happen. One is through a pilot agreement, that is a payment in lieu of taxes, which we have asked for, but the state has not set a precedent in doing before. And the other way to do that is to have included it in the contract negotiations, which were just approved this morning. Now, they were not included in the 3-year contract with Dartmouth Health, as far as I know. That's concerning to me, because in a $99 million contract, you would think you could eke out up to $200,000 a year for the local community. So we will be continuing on this conversation about how to ensure that we are going to be compensated for the tax revenue at the very least. That does not address the additional burden on services, okay?
So a police officer is going to be necessary.
I understand that, and so we are still fighting for both EMS, fire, and law enforcement coverage because we understand there has been an increase. we have had issues with the fact that what we've been told is, well, we had a couple tough patients and they created some problems, but it seems okay now. The nature of the business is that you're going to get tough patients periodically as the state's facility. Let me finish. As the state's facility. So my concern is, how are we going to respond when those peaks and valleys happen? And right now, you're only at 40 beds, right? So 40 to 65 patients, and you're hoping to scale up to 110, I think, what's our max?
72.
72, okay, because of the other facility.
Double what it is now.
So, again, I share your concerns, and this is what we have been asking about. I wanted to provide you with those numbers so that you understood that we are on this like white on rice, because it is so important to the community to get compensated both for the lost revenue and for the burden on services. We're asking.
As well as taxpayer value of their homes.
I don't know that I can address that one, but I can work on those other two.
That's realistic.
Right now, the housing values are so out of proportion that I don't know that this is a place for that conversation. I get you.
Property, your values have decreased.
Let's move on to the information.
Excuse me, I have one question. Tom Lechner, Hampstead, thank you very much for the overview. Can you say in maybe a more comprehensive way, what's the bottom line of a staffing plan we need to provide the service coverage and the total cost? I'm hearing these other numbers somewhere around 200K. What's the bottom line?
Both our fire deputy chief and our police chief have provided the safety committee with numbers that they feel would help them address the current level of services. We have a separate safety subcommittee that has been the topic of discussion. The burden of the calls, the nature of the services, the fact that the EMS calls can take an hour instead of 20 minutes, and it takes our teams off the floor. So we have been talking about those numbers and Chief Kelly and Deputy Chief Warnock will speak to those. I want to just get to the two other presentations, the one about the facility and the one about the water and property issues, because I want you to have the whole picture. I think that will allow us to ask better informed questions, okay? Come over to the podium if you've got a question. Come over to the podium if you have a question. I'm going to let you go because I've interrupted you. Thank you. Now,
If the safety doesn't improve, are you willing to resign from all your positions?
all right. Did you have a question?
I have a couple of statements, and I guess from that, they're common sense questions. I was at the meeting that you had at the library, and I, from many people, gave the benefit of the doubt because I'm all for helping children and psychiatric problems and even criminals, and I live in Hampstead. I moved from Revere, Massachusetts to Hampstead for reasons. Still giving the benefit of the doubt. But I have to say now that you have a believability problem. That's the problem. Not all these other issues, and they are for some people, but you have a believability problem. Because we were assured at that meeting, yes, because nobody wants a facility in their backyard. But yes, we have addressed the safety issues. Before we bring high cases, what you were speaking, level 5 and 4, in, we will take care of all of that. Hasn't been taken care of. So now you're going uphill and maybe nowhere because nobody can believe that any longer. And I, for one, can't. And I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt and give, but there's believability issues here. Because safety, all I've heard are stories and horror stories, and we don't even have that other facility yet in our backyard. So, thank you.
I want to bring up some parents who have their children with them who wanted to address some of their concerns. And it's early enough in the evening and the temperature's dropped a little bit. So why don't you come on up? Just make sure you introduce yourself and speak loudly, okay?
All right, well, I'm going to start. My name's Nicole Duquette, and I want to thank Lori. She's doing a wonderful job trying to calm everybody down and keep everybody respectful. It's a tough job to have, and I know Lori has personal ties to both, you know, EMS and fire department too. So just want to keep that in mind. I do have concerns about this facility. We are neighbors to it, or in the neighborhood. I do have, you know, 2 children. One of them's with me today, and this is his best friend, Jason. His parents are here as well. And we're very concerned about this because we are raising families in this neighborhood. You know, we moved into a neighborhood that we thought was going to be nice and calm, that we wouldn't have sirens. You know, I went to UMass Lowell, so I know what sirens are, and that's the community I did not want to have raised a family where I was always hearing the noise of the sirens going on. Little concerned that we've had in the transition between the private entity and the public state, we've had so many issues. I think that can be solved. I think the fence will be a great idea to deter, but it does need to come up. It does need to be built, and I do think you need to give the residents around there an actual time that it is going to be constructed. I think that would go a far way to show that you are doing something and not just talking about it. I do have concerns that this is a facility that you typically see near highways, near state police stations. You see it in Concord, you see it in Manchester. You don't see it in a community that's so far away from the highways and so far away from state police, so that all the burden is on our local neighborhoods. And not just Hampstead, but where we draw from neighboring areas too. We draw from Atkinson, we draw from Plastow, we draw from Kingston. So when our police and ambulance and EMS and fire department are drawn to the Hampstead Hospital, that's taking away from the community and hopefully not taking away from somebody that is in need, that needs those services in Hampstead. That's my big concern, because we do not have the ability. We're a small community. We do not have the staff to support a Hampstead Hospital and our small little community. With that being said, I feel like, you know, we talk about our families and everything, and the reason why I brought my son here is because he brought something up to me. And I think it's really good to have them talk about it too, because, you know, they have their concerns, and just to put a face to it, it's not just us as parents saying that our family is concerned. They are. Our kids are concerned about this. So I'm just going to introduce my son Evan and his friend Jason.
Whenever I hear the sirens, I get really worried. For instance, I was out walking my dog and I hear the sirens and I get worried, and I feel like I have to run home, like something bad's gonna happen in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Evan.
Hi, every day I always hear sirens coming from any police cars that cross the street, but now I don't really want it to get any worse than it is.
Good job. Why don't we turn it over to HDR perhaps, and they can talk about the facility so you can see what the plan is and at least get an idea of what it currently looks like.
I guess I'd like to start. So my name is Ted Cupper. Pardon me?
Really loud, Ted.
Hang on just a second. Hi. Everybody hear me now? Yes. Thank you. So my name is Ted Cupper. I'm the director of the Division of Public Works, and I just wanted to take a moment to explain how this portion of state government works relative to the Youth Development Center. So by state law, any building that's over $25,000 in value, which includes this one, must come through the Division of Public Works. It's a state law. It's to provide continuity about the construction of the building and the longevity of the building. So Tim Smith, raise your hand, Tim. Tim Smith is the project manager in charge of this YDC project, and he works for me. We've hired a consulting company called HDR, and that's Tommy and Jerry, and they're an architectural firm. They also have many consultants that work under them. One of them is a civil engineering consultant, SMRT, and we have a representative from SMRT here to answer your questions as well. I know that there's been a lot of frustration about communication. And one thing that you have to understand is that a facility of this size and this value takes time to collect data and to develop the plans with the team. And the team is Jerry and Sam, Dr. Morin and Jerry Rocha, the director of YDC, and the psychiatrist in charge of that facility, and Marissa's team as well. We're separate. This project is separate from Hampstead Hospital. We're co-locating there, but it's a separate facility, and we're only dealing with the YDC portion of this campus. So I wanted to just outline who these folks are that are going to answer your questions and give you this presentation tonight. And I want to let you know a little bit about our schedule. We've finally collected all the data that we need to, pretty much. I'm pretty sure we have. We've compiled that data, and we've begun the design process. That's a phased, stepped process where we work with Marissa, with Sam, and with Jerry to find out how many children are you going to have there? What kind of facility are you going to need to treat these children? And it's numbers. The next phase, we develop a floor plan, and it's a very rough floor plan. Then we start looking at budgeting. In this particular case, what we found was that the budget exceeded the budget that we had to build the facility. That means we have to go back. The team has to get back together again and figure out what can we cut, what can we use for multi-purpose rooms, how can we build a facility for the budget that we have to treat the number of kids that we're expecting to have at that facility. That all takes time. And I know it's frustrating that you really haven't heard anything, but we literally, until this point, haven't developed plans to show you anything until tonight. And tonight we're going to have a presentation about the facility, and I hope that we'll be able to answer all your questions. Right now, the tentative schedule is for the project to go out to bid for construction in August of this year, and to get GNC approval for the funding of the project once we have a contractor that has bid the project and has been awarded the project sometime around November of this year. And we expect that construction will start sometime in 2025. So that's a rough schedule. That's where we're at right now. I think you know who the folks are that are going to present to you. And we'd be happy to entertain any questions that you might have about the YDC facility. With that, I'll turn it over to Tommy and Jerry, our consultants from HDR.
I'm gonna try this. Does this help at all, or is this too fuzzy? How's here? Better? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Tommy Sinclair with HCR. I'm going to flip through these presentation slides and walk through, as Ted mentioned, where we're at in the process. As he did mention, we are wrapping up the design phase in August. So at this point, we're about, what I would say is about 60% done with what we're, the design portion of what we're doing with all of the drawings, the engineering, and all of those site components as part of this new facility.
I feel like the only thing people care about is there a large perimeter fence with a razor wire and a gate? Is that
Sure.
included? I'm not sure that we really care. Like, you're gonna build the facility either way, no matter what we do, right? So, like, we can complain, we can stomp our feet, but you're still gonna build it. I think the point is there a large fence?
Well,
Razor wire, gate, guards,
Yeah.
extra police officer, lowering tax value.
Let them go. You're wasting our time.
Sorry, my apologies.
So the fence, the perimeter fence is, to be clear, from HCR's perspective here, from our scope of work, it is a separate project, but we are showing it for coordination purposes on this plan that you see on the screen. This is the site plan of the existing campus. The black line around the perimeter represents the location of that perimeter fence. Justin mentioned the two site entry points. So at the bottom of this page is the East Road entrance that you drive up in between the trees along East Road. So you can see there's a site entry point tag there, and that's where, as Justin mentioned, that would be a guard location. And then that fence wraps around the entire site, and then at the back on the top, or on the left side of this page, there's another site entry point, and that's a card access only vehicular, what you call a vehicular sally port, where you come in through the gates at that point.
How tall is that fence?
Hi, so the fence is actually being constructed by Hampstead Hospital as a separate project for Hampstead Hospital. Our facility will be secure in and of itself. The YDC is secure in and of itself. The secure perimeter, so you'll have a secure perimeter within a secure perimeter, if that makes any sense.
So just something for your knowledge is that the current YDC facility in Manchester does not have really any fences at all or barbed wire for the same reason that you're about to hear more about, which is that it is secure by virtue of how the facility itself is constructed. So the reason Hampstead Hospital is building the fence is because kids who have mental health issues need time outside as part of their healing, and we don't want them to leave the campus. So for Hampstead Hospital, it's important, and for those kids, to be able to have time outside to play, as kids should, but also to realize that some of them do have risks of self-harm and self-injury, and we don't want them to leave that campus. So for YDC, again, I want to emphasize that in its history at the Manchester facility, because of the construction, which is going to be even more state-of-the-art on this campus in Hampstead, what you're about to hear about is why at YDC you don't need fences. We're doing one anyway, but you don't need fences because of the way it's constructed. And our team will talk to that more as they go through the design. So we are doing a perimeter fence. We are committed to encumbering those funds in contract by June 30th of this year. We have proposals coming together in real time, and we already have the recreational fences built so that kids can have outdoor time and fresh air safely, but we recognize that the town has asked for broader fencing. So let's continue in the presentation to better understand how that building itself offers top-notch security, not relying on just fences or barbed wire.
Yep, thank you, Marissa. So as you...
Why don't you keep going?
So we have three quotes right now from fence builders that are in the works. And we have two values for those fences, both 15 and 18 feet. We're gonna get an idea of what that both looks like on the perimeter, and that's where we're at. So that will be the height of the perimeter fence.
Okay, and then if the funding is going to be secured in June, when will the construction be?
And does that include razor wire on top of the fence?
Okay. Keep in mind that we're talking about a government contract, so you know from building your own homes that you simply do not write the check out at the first bid. So they have to go through the process. Excuse me. Excuse me. Originally, when this was first proposed, there was a great outrage in the community about is there going to be a fence, an ugly fence all around the property? It isn't until about 4 months ago that we expressed to them that a perimeter fence would be welcomed by the community given what's transpired. That is a relatively new issue. They have put fencing around the outdoor areas that the kids are now allowed in because of what we've talked about. So I just want you to understand, we are seeing incremental improvements in what's going on because of the demands that the community has raised, okay? A 15-foot fence does not likely need razor wire on it. And if you let them finish and talk about the containment area for the kids at YDC, the kids that are incarcerated, that has a different element.
I understand we might be upset about having a child in prison put into our little tiny community.
Yes, I think you've conveyed that, and I think we're all appreciative of that. But I would like to have you not monopolize the conversation any further, okay? There's a lot of people that want to speak, and I want to give them that opportunity. That's right, and the... Mm-hmm. Okay. Believe me, I think they have every interest in getting it up as soon as possible. The fencing that we talked about at the September meeting is fencing that's adjacent to the existing building to give the kids outdoor space. That fencing is up. I can tell you that because I take a spin around the building every 2 weeks to see what progress has been made, because we've talked with the fire department and about emergency practices if there's a problem in the building and the kids are evacuated to the fenced-in areas. So if you were up at the property, you would see fenced-in areas now that secure the kids so they can get outside but not get off the property. The fencing that we're talking about in this illustration is perimeter fencing to go around the entire property. That was not discussed in September. The fencing that was discussed in September is adjacent to the existing building, and that's in place. This fencing is larger, and it's in response to the community now saying, you know what? I think we'd like some fencing, and that's what they've responded to. But as you can imagine, given the size of the property, they've got to go out for bids, which is what we expect them to do as taxpayers, to go out for competitive bids and to spend the money wisely. Unfortunately, it's government. There's a process. So let's have him continue to talk about the security of that facility so that you have an understanding of what that's going to look like, okay?
Can I say that we're probably always going to, we're asking questions from the previous
Okay,
discussion?
let's just get through that piece, and I promise, I am gonna, you think I'm gonna keep Randy waiting much longer?
I don't know.
And I'm just loving her skirt, so I'm keeping her here for that, so.
She looks very cute.
She does. Okay, go HDR, tell us about that building. Make us feel better, HDR, come on.
All right, so the new facility is in yellow. You can see the footprint. The red lines represent the new secure fencing specific to the new IDC. The big play field, you can see there's an exterior basketball court. Hopefully you can see that on the screen, but that's their large play field where the kids will go out to play outside and get their outdoor time. Again, in this fence here, this is going to be a 14-foot high no-climb fence. It's the same system they're using currently at their existing facility. And if you drive by it, it goes 14 feet tall and has a big curve on it, so kids cannot climb up and over it. So that's what the red lines represent. The red line, the red box at the top left of the yellow footprint, that is the Sallyport entry, the secure entry into the facility. So this is where kids are coming in and through admissions, and also where kids are getting released from this particular facility. There's no other way those kids will come in and out. The large black arrow is where the public would come and visit. It's where some staff might enter. It's also where families will come and visit with their kids if they're in this facility. The other black arrow on the building with the white footprint is the public entry, the current public entry to the existing facility.
Could you please point out East Road on that so that we
Sure.
have an idea?
No. East Road is at the bottom of the page.
It's off the screen, right here.
Okay, so it goes diagonally across the bottom?
Correct.
Yes.
So I think it's important for us to know the
Mhm.
layout.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have any other questions about orientation and about what we talked about? Yes.
Her question was, has anyone tested these fences
Let me
against
clarify-
teenage
let me
boys?
See if I can clarify your question. You're talking about this perimeter fencing.
There's the other one. If you get through that one, then probably get through the other one too.
Okay, so we, this team, can't really speak in detail about the perimeter fencing. We don't know that much about it because it's not part of our project. However, we can speak to the fencing that's outlined in red, and this is what they call a no-climb fence, which means that it's very similar to a chain link fence, but the mesh is a lot finer. You can't, I don't think you can even get your fingers into
Correct.
the mesh, it's that fine. It's impossible to climb this fence, and this fence is used in many other detention facilities, including prisons, all over the country.
Could you also please point out Big Drive on that map as a locus? Because that's the neighborhood that abuts the property.
So stand up and
That's the
point it out.
residential neighborhood that abuts the property that people have expressed concerns about earlier.
If you're going down East Road, Faith Drive would be.
Off the map, but
That
over
doesn't-
on that side.
Really?
Is that right?
Okay.
That other site entry point on the top left side is over toward the
Okay.
banquet hall, okay? Just to give you perspective.
Right, this is the back entrance to the existing Hampstead Hospital.
Right.
Any other questions about orientation?
Yeah, I wanted to know about a construction fence being built around the new building being built. The last thing we need is some of the people escaping and getting some weapons out of the building.
Right.
So you're asking about fencing for this building right here, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, this building is designed to be self-contained. Does not need any fencing. The building itself is the fence.
No, she's asking about construction fence. So I'll respond. So when this will be part of the contractor's requirements, and they will have some sort of construction fence that they will be operating and building within to prevent that from happening.
Understood. So let me talk about the construction that we're anticipating for the new YDC. When we built the new women's prison facility in Concord, it was required in the contract that contractors had to lock all their vehicles. They had to remove all the tools off-site. All the tools needed to be secured in steel lock boxes or taken off the site during the construction of the facility.
See if you can use that.
To the extent that if any tools on a nightly, when the construction ended for the day, security would patrol that whole construction area If a vehicle was unlocked, or if there were tools that were found, they were confiscated from the contractor, and then the contractor had to pay to get that back through an auction that supplied money back to the prison project. We had literally no tools stolen from the women's prison project. The site was incredibly secure, and we're planning to use that same kind of contract here.
They have done it already, they've escaped and come into where I live, and we've had the police down there catching, I think it was 5 of them.
I understand. So this again now, we're moving into questions about how the existing Hampstead Hospital is being operated and how they're securing the folks that are in there. And that's going to be an ongoing question for them while we're building the new facility. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Cindy Quintel, some of you know me. I work at Hampstead Hospital. Hi, I'm Cindy Quintel, some of you know me. I work at Hampstead Hospital and been there for 22 years. Thank you. One of the biggest issues, and I've been there when we've had to have the state police, Hampstead Police, the fire, and we've had to do room searches, body searches, because we were looking for weapons. Okay? I haven't had the opportunity to meet you, sir, yet, because I haven't been over there in a few weeks. I've been taking care of my health. Hope to go back. Hope not to lose my job, but if I do, I could do other things. The problem is, you guys keep saying, there's Hampstead Hospital, there's the new youth detention center. Because what's given us the biggest problems, and why so many of my coworkers that I've seen get broken bones, major concussions, not being able to come back and do their job that they wanted to do. Because we have this divide. This is Hampstead Hospital. This is the state. As far as I know now, the state owns it all. Okay? So to say that, oh, they're two separate entities, but they're not, because that's the major problem right now. That's how we've been getting hurt over there right now. I love that the perimeter's going up. I'm glad that, you're taking note of the residents, because I also live in Hampstead, right across the street, and I have picked up the phone. Hey, you're missing a couple, come on over. Okay? We have kids. There's a difference between behavioral and mental health. Hampstead Hospital mainly dealt with mental health. The people that are there now that are working there, we are highly qualified. Some of us overly qualified. The kids that we're getting now, those handful of kids, are very dangerous. They're the ones that have hurt us. I went on to the unit, had to go to that call. I looked at the unit that I loved, that I always worked on, and I thought I walked into the subway at New York City with all its graffiti and all its garbage. And that was after that unit had been renovated for the 3rd time. So we need to be transparent here, okay? These guys are scared. I don't blame them. But it doesn't mean we can't do the job. But we are highly trained for mental health. We are not highly trained for those kids, because they'll look right at you and say, you know what, I'm going to jail from here, so I don't give up, and punch you in the face as you're standing there trying to help them. We're not saying that those kids don't need help. Absolutely they need help, and we would gladly do it. But let me ask you, Lots of times, we are understaffed. We have been mandated to stay for another shift because there isn't enough staff. So how are we supposed to protect and help those kids that are have true mental health, as in true attempts at suicide, major depression, and they're mixed in with these kids? Those kids have been traumatized all over again in a whole different way. I know.
I so appreciate sort of another insider's view, and I want to make sure there were some questions that were asked about terms like acuity, and also the distinction between what brings a child to the YDC versus to Hampstead Hospital. We've talked before about the terms like acuity and about the type of patients that Hampstead Hospital as a private institution saw and the type of patients that you're seeing now. Justin, can you, in 10 words or less, give us just sort of a definition of what you mean by acuity?
Yeah, I'll do my best in 10 words or less. So thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. I think if you do reach out to your current employees, is that we've worked really hard to ensure that the employees there now have access to express their concerns, to be heard, and I do feel that we are moving in a direction that staff are feeling heard, and we are addressing those. We have taken on kids who are not appropriate for Hampstead in the recent future. I mean, the recent past. That is not going to continue today. The kids who are going to treat at Hampstead Hospital are the kids who present to us with a problem that we can address as a psychiatric hospital. That does not mean that some of those kids won't come in with acute or with difficult behaviors that we have to manage, but we are not changing the facility to house child and adolescents just because they don't have a place to go. So we have changed a lot of those, and please, when you come back, we've started unit-based practice councils, open door, and staff are coming to me to talk to me. I've spent many hours with patient-facing staff, which I think are the most important staff in that hospital. And I appreciate the work that they do, but I'm sincere in taking those ideas from patient-facing staff and making those changes, and that I do have a commitment to that for sure. So. Yes. I do, just one more second, I'm not going to drone on by any means. It's important to hear a lot of this feedback from me. I don't, to someone's point, I don't know how much I can say that's not going to sound like lip service. However, I can make a commitment to hearing you and to addressing those concerns as they come up for sure, and to giving you detail on that. I hear your frustration. I don't feel this is a great seat to say, hey, everything's going to be better. We are moving in a better direction with help from staff-facing employees. I appreciate hearing your concerns. I also want to appreciate being able to provide the feedback of how we address those concerns in real time and not months and months away. So that will be all I ask. You have my commitment to, if you contact me, I'll reach back out to you and we can discuss these issues, and even here tonight. But that's my certain commitment to all of the citizens of Hampstead and all of the residents and patients that Hampstead treats. So.
Okay. I know there were a lot of questions still about the security of the new building, and want to make sure our colleagues at HDR can cover that.
I want to let them move on with that part, but I
The
want to
design.
let them move on with the part.
Sure. So just to kind of talk about, I guess, how the facility is built physically from a physical security standpoint, we have gone through and developed floor plans that illustrate the wall construction type. This is something that we use on other youth facilities of this nature, and we've started to incorporate that into our floor plans. This facility that in the footprint in yellow is made up of multiple units in different areas where the kids will go to receive treatment, how they're coming into the facility and leaving, as well as places where they recreate and have places where they're eating their meals. And I'll show you some of those images in a little bit. So from a physical standpoint, from how it's built, we have these robust partition types built in. We also have high security grade doors that are also acting as a physical secure perimeter. And on top of that, we layer on the electronic security. So in this particular facility, we have something that's called central control. And that's a person that is manning and watching all the cameras and controlling all the doors of how folks move throughout this facility within this yellow footprint, 24/7. So much so that even the director has to buzz in through the door himself. He does not have free access to go anywhere he wants. That person, control, has to let him through certain doors. So that person is there 24/7. And I don't want to, you can speak more to this later if you want, Jerry, but so there's the physical aspects of how this facility is built, but there's also a lot of technology and security components that we've layered on and have incorporated, including cameras, card access control, things of that nature. With that.
What are the qualifications of the security people there? My son is a police officer, and I know what he's been trained to do as a first responder. But what are the qualifications for somebody being hired for security in both facilities?
So I think we can invite Director Rocha, who's in charge of the programming, to talk about the training and capabilities that the staff have at that facility.
Sure. Is this working? Great. All right, great. So again, Jerry Rocha. Oh, it's not really. It's working. Jerry Rocha. I'm the director over at the Sununu Center. So I can just get down to security for everybody. As Tommy had mentioned, we do have central control. So that individual is the eyes and ears of the entire facility and keeps an eye on it 24/7. Again, allowing access within our secure perimeter, and there is no access without them allowing that. So I know that there's been discussions around concerns with risk of youth escaping or AWOL. We have never experienced that. And again, as discussed, we have older technology, almost 20 years older. So we can assume that it would be even better. And I can confidently say that. With this, for our staffing supports, currently we have 14 youth, and we have more staff than youth for supports. In addition to that, we also have an additional response team that supports our staff. So when we look at supporting the youth in a security sense, we go above and beyond to make sure that we don't have any concerns or issues. So that will be continued when we look at our new site. If you want to get into detail around clinical supports, obviously Dr. Morin can speak to that. And looking at addressing the question, it was around
the training.
Training, thank you, I appreciate that. So qualifications and training. We have a month-long core training program. So for qualifications, they have to have the right educational requirements, bachelor's, and for state employment. And with that, there are levels of experience that can help support that piece. But as far as the training programming, it's a month-long curriculum for core training. 2 weeks of that is focused straight on how to work with the youth with de-escalation techniques as well as physical management techniques. Again, it's very much in depth with that. Aside from that, we do focus on trainings with trauma-informed approach and looking at how to work with youth who have some mental health concerns. I know that we talked about maybe a separation of those with mental health struggles and those who are within the YDC, but I can tell you that if not 100%, most of our youth have a traumatic experience and have a traumatic past. So we still want to support their clinical needs. So if we're looking at what we do internally, As far as clinical, again, I'm happy to have Dr. Moore speak on that. But that is the requirements. Obviously, for our clinical staff, when their requirements, we have our supports through Dartmouth, and they are very well high qualified for that as well.
What about Hampstead now? What about Hampstead, the qualifications for security?
Yeah, I don't know that your question was.
Okay. Okay. Again, one at a time, and I believe her question was, can you tell us about the security staff at the Hampstead Hospital facility?
Yes, so we have 2 levels of training and security. One is CPI, which all of our staff receive. So
Explain that, CPI,
Yep.
sorry.
So CPI is a de-escalation techniques, also restraint and holds as childs are escalating. Every staff member is trained on that. Again, on the next level of that, we have a PERT team response, which is specific individuals who are identified with strengths in that area to respond during dangerous times. That is what I reference as our PERT team. And the third level of security and safety we have is a full-time 24-hour safety ambassadors in the hospital. I believe we have a total of 17, and they are there 24 hours a day.
Okay. I want to see if there's anything else that we want to say about the YDC facility, and then I have a bunch of folks that have questions that I think in some cases relate to the YDC facility and the property issues, and I want to make sure that we get to those as well. Okay? So Jerry, anything else? Tom, Jerry, Tom? They love that, I got to say. It works out.
Yeah, we can go through it real quick if everybody wants to see where we're
All right.
at in the development of it, or if they want to
Okay.
get questions.
Yeah,
I think they want to get to
We're
questions.
trying to be respectful of the interest in the questions.
Sure.
I do know there have been questions. I see, Julie, I mean, there are questions undoubtedly about the land and water and such that we do have Tim and Ted can speak to, but we're
Mhm.
happy to take that as questions come if you prefer.
Okay. So first up.
Hi, my name is Michaela Eichen. I live on Golden Meadow with my husband and my 15-year-old son. So I heard when you were talking about the mesh fence going up, you were using terminology like jail, facility, prisons. And let's be honest, YDC doesn't really stand for the development center. It's a detention center. So there's a massive discrepancy when you're talking about mental health patients that need rehabilitation and a criminal that's stealing and is violent and doing horrible things. So when you put these two together, I feel like it's a recipe for a disaster. And it's very evident that we're very upset. So my question is, how can we reverse it so that YDC doesn't come to Hampstead? That's my only question.
So I don't have a satisfying answer there because the decision has been made for it to come to Hampstead. So in terms of the one point that I want to make, and we have people here who work with these kids every day, and I think it's important to understand a little bit more about who they are in terms of the perception of these being at both the hospital but also at the current SYSC. These are, I just want the group to understand, and like these are kids who have incredible levels of trauma in their lives. Due to no fault of their own in many cases, and who have mental health needs that are extremely complex. New Hampshire has the lowest rates of incarceration of youth because we as a state invest in mental health. Our legislature funds programs in schools like this one, in communities, but there are times that kids' needs escalate to the point where they can't be safe in their home and community, mostly because of risk of harm to themselves. So I just want to acknowledge, if I could, that these are kids with very complex needs. It's a relatively small number. We need to manage their needs within our facility and not depend on first responders. But to be totally clear, and there has not been an elopement from that campus I was just asking the team, I believe in about over 6 months. Those youth are seeking harm to self. And they tell us that because we do a really intensive debriefing and process afterwards. So I completely empathize with the feeling and that Evan and Jason and the families are expressing. We need to keep youth in the facility safe for themselves and safe so the community feels secure. But the harm that these youth threaten and that our teams work on every single day relates to the trauma and the issues that they have, having experienced abuse and neglect almost universally in their lives. So I just want to acknowledge who the population is. I'm not saying that these kids haven't been involved in situations that are very disturbing and at times violent. But after each one of these town halls, I've had people come up to me and say, thank you for helping serve at Hampstead Hospital or at YDC, a child in my family or my community who had nowhere else to go. So I just want to acknowledge that population.
I mean, that's great, but I have a 5 and a 7-year-old who play 400 feet away in their backyard. So like, that's great that those kids need help, and I'm sympathetic to that. I love that we as a community can support them with our tax dollars. I am with it. But my children in their backyard, I mean, I'm worried about my kids in my backyard. Can you blame me? I live several hundred feet away. I have little kids who play in their backyard. I have a child with his own anxiety, right? And if I explain to him that there's a child prison several hundred feet away through those trees, is he gonna feel safe to play in his own backyard? Do I need to buy an alarm system? Is the state government going to pay for my house to have an alarm system in my house? Are they? Are they? Are they?
No.
Are they going to?
No, they're not. And I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. Now, you've had, excuse me, but you've.
No, excuse me. Are they also going to help me?
Why don't you shut up and let her talk?
My property value.
I am a resident of this town. I am a first responder in this town. My husband and my daughter are first responders in this town. And they go on the calls to the hospital and will go to the YDC in service when there's an emergency. So I am acutely sensitive to the threat to public safety, honestly. I don't live in the neighborhood. I understand what you're saying. I think part of it is going to be how you explain that facility to your kid. You could tell your child that there are, excuse me, we let you speak when it was your turn, even though that's been plentiful. I'd like to finish my sentence. I think they deserve to hear all sides of this conversation. And I want to let other people in the room have their say as well. These people have been waiting in line patiently to speak. I understand the risks to safety, and we are doing our best to make sure that the community is protected. If we had gone further with the discussion about the facility, what you probably would have heard is that there are interior courtyards in that yellow box where the kids that are incarcerated there can go. We've had questions before about, well, if there's a bad kid at Hampstead Hospital, why don't they just send them to the YDC? Because the kids that are going to YDC are sent there by a judge in a criminal court case, in an action by a judge. It's not just, let's throw them over there because they're bad kids. The kids that we're dealing with now at Hampstead Hospital are way different than the kids that Hampstead Hospital as a private institution could handle. As a private institution, they could say, nah, I don't think we have a space for that one. This is the state's facility. And so they're going to get the worst of the worst kids because there isn't any other place for them to go. But their job is going to be to contain that and to help those kids. And that's just in the mental health facility. Hampstead Hospital has been here since the 70s, and we as a community have supported the fact that kids need mental health and substance use disorder care. I get that. I get that. And we've had the discussions. You know what? Manchester and Concord were considered, and the plan said that Hampstead's the best facility. I agree with you, it's not. We have a committee. We voted against putting it in Hampstead. We didn't have a say in that. Because as I said, the kids that are now going there are very different than the kids that were handled and the way the facility was designed to handle them. That's why the changes have been made in the security systems, in the fencing systems, in the access points, in who gets to go outside and who doesn't. You're absolutely right. The game has changed and the learning curve was ugly. My concern is as we change to a new contractor, that there isn't another period of ugly learning curve. But there are some other issues about the property that I also want to have addressed. I know Randy has some concerns regarding the design of this facility in relation to the environmental issues and the water issues, which are also crucial in our community. So I want to give him a chance to ask those questions as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Two gentlemen from HDR, engineering firm. Who are you, if you raise your hand? Tom and Jerry. And how long have you had the design or the plan to build this new building?
We were awarded the project, I believe, last July or August of last year.
And it's still on your desk? Has it gone out for bid?
No, sir. It goes out in August to bid.
And why is it taking so long?
Well, actually, we've actually compressed the schedule. It typically takes this amount of time, sometimes actually even longer for this scale of a facility.
And if you had more engineers, could you do it faster?
Well, we have a group of engineers, our civil engineers here tonight, and we have other engineers on staff that are consultants that are doing the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, and structural.
In full disclosure, I'm on the planning board, so I know that anything we send to Concord to get approvals on, or not we the town, but any application that goes to Concord, typically takes longer than it used to take, and that's because they don't have the engineers. But why can't you hire more engineers to get the job done?
Well, we had a schedule set by the state originally, and we talked about that, I think, at the first meeting, and outlined the entire schedule for the project, and we're actually condensing that schedule now to get it out sooner.
And you think the plan will go out for bid when?
August.
And until then, there's no building there, no yellow building there.
Correct.
Correct.
I think my problem is that my real issue, I understand your problem, and I understand also that since this is a government building, that you do not have to follow the Hampstead rules for building a new building, which I think is a shaft to the town, but that's the way the rules are. And we have seen it in a number of cases, sometimes when our local school decides to put a building up, but also when the when the state government decides to put a new building in our town, even though we've got lots of acres there. And it has been pointed out by a number of people why it got put into Hampstead, only because there was a hole here, seems to be a waste of intellectual property. I think I am most upset with our representatives here that we're not able to stop it coming to Hampstead. And I think it's terrible that the state youth group also thought that this was a good idea to get it away from Concord or Manchester to put it in Hampstead. It's just the wrong place to put it. And the fact that you can't figure out a faster way to solve the problems that everybody has pointed out. I mean, there's lots of problems being pointed out here. The fact that you can't solve those problems quicker, excuse me, is again another strike against the state.
I will tell you that we attended a meeting with the governor. Senator Birdsall and I and Chief Kelly attended a meeting with the governor. We brought the petition that had been created by some residents in town that opposed the building of this facility. And I quote you when I say, it's a done deal. Talk to the next guy. So while I've gone through all of the enabling legislation for this because I wanted to make sure that we were being properly served. And the bill, the House Bill 49, that actually defines the YDC and where it's going to happen and what's going to happen with it, says specifically that there's a closure date, which has been bumped a little bit, for the YDC, the Sununu Center in Manchester, and that that property is to be sold. Now, you can imagine it has a pretty high ticket value for the state to be selling that property. So as much as I would like to tell you that we're going to fight to the death to make sure this doesn't happen, it is a done deal. The money has already been spent on the engineering and on the architecture. The money is already being fantasized about the property being sold in Manchester, and it's going to happen. So our best strategy is to get compensation, get security, have input on the process, and hold them accountable. And that's what I'm hoping that we do here, and that's what I hope you continue to do. Do you have a question you want to add to?
So I'm trying to assess risk, I guess. So how often has somebody AWOL'd, eloped out of the current facility in Manchester? Like in a year, how many do you see? So you've never had somebody elope or go AWOL?
Not once, no.
Okay. And then the current risk, right? So first of all, they've asked about the fence. Now, I know you can't give an exact date, but I think for their peace of mind, if you can give like a maximum, like is this a year thing? But just let me finish what I was gonna ask, because I think that I'll give you my thought process. So say if it's a year from now, I don't know how many calls there's been and I don't know how many elopements there have been, but if it's a year from now, how many kids are gonna get out of Hampstead Hospital, do you think? And then how often are they gonna hear sirens? Because I'm worried about those kids and the effect on it. So like, I think them having like a drop dead date, and we know you're the government, you may go past that, but like something you can commit to, like what would that date be? And then, I don't know, either Chief Kelly or you guys can talk about how many kids have eloped and how many calls that they've had. So I think they deserve at least a ballpark from you guys.
Well, you take it, go ahead.
Yes, I can give you a ballpark. So some of this is dependent upon the contractors that we can get in. So this is the perimeter fence that we're looking to build up is not an idea of like, hey, we're looking at this. We have had 2 contractors come in. They've quoted out the property. Obviously, there are environmental concerns which we want completed. So I can't give you a real ballpark because I don't know what the construction is, but that is currently happening right now. So we are going to put it out to bid and put it to construction, and then in that time, that's happening now.
Do you have any idea in past projects how long it takes? Like what's a max?
I don't, so I can't answer that because if there's ledge there that needs to be drilled into, if there are water issues that need to be corrected, but it's happening now. So it is not an idea that we're facing out, and the contractors have come in, and we're working with an architect to look at that.
So as soon as you know, can you let the community
Yes,
know?
as soon as we have a start date and an end date, we will let the community know.
And how many people are eloping, like, have in the last year? Like, how many people have escaped? Like, I don't know how long these kids have been going to this facility. In the last year, how many have eloped or escaped?
So I know we've had patients elope from the building, but I do not believe since I started in January that we've had a patient elope get off the property since January.
But it's still, how many calls do you get in a year?
It varies by year, but I can speak to a couple different things. And I believe looking at my records, we had 3 elopements in February. 1 was absolutely off property. Going back to the most recent one was February 26th. And 1 on the 24th of February and 1 on the 19th of February. The 1 on the 24th made it to Faith Drive.
I come at this from a different perspective, I think, not only as a resident of Hampstead, but I had adopted a daughter unknown to me. She had severe mental health issues.
She spent 2 times at Hampstead Hospital. We were so happy to have a place in our town that I could be there all the time while she was there. New Hampshire has had problems with mental health for as long as I can remember. And having a daughter with severe, actually 6 diagnoses of mental illness, put me in places I wish I had never had to go to. I worked for the Alliance for the Mentally Ill. I did training with PIC. I was heavily involved. The outcome was not really a good outcome from a state point of view. What my daughter went through and what we went through as a family should never happen to anybody. So while she was here in Hampstead Hospital, we felt she was safe. I had the nurses there tell me, stop coming to visit. It takes 5 of us to put her to bed at night. I am worried about the children of this state who need mental health services and are languishing in our emergency rooms. Sorry. I would be very uncomfortable to have my daughter there now, considering that there is going to be this type of facility there. Now, you're saying that the YDC is going to be all safe. However, with the facility the way it is, your staff is not safe. My daughter probably would not have been safe. Why don't you have, it's my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, your own security guards who are trained to do mental health services for these children, to know how, you know, even police officers, although I think we've come a long way, they probably know how to handle mental health. I had a tenant that was schizophrenic, and this town was very helpful. Why don't you have your own staff so you're not calling our police department? Why? That would end that issue. Because most of us are upset that our police are being called away, that we pay for, and they're being called away for a facility that right now should be a mental health facility. Why are there kids there that are doing such damage? Why? Why aren't they waiting till the YDC is built?
So we do have our own security team, and we've increased that security and put things in place.
So what do you have?
We have, I believe it's 17 full-time safety ambassadors, 24 hours a day.
What does ambassador mean?
I'm sorry, safety ambassador.
What is a safety ambassador?
Security guard. Security
Are
guard
they
team.
trained in mental health issues?
Yes, yes.
Then why have these incidences happened?
We have not had them in place the entire time, so that team is fully staffed at this point.
So how many are on, like, say, 8 to 5?
4.
How many children, quote unquote, are in the facility at this point?
36 right now today.
36. So you have 4. What amount of those 36 are volatile?
2.
And what is the staff ratio per child?
1 for the patients who need it, it's a 1-to-1.
1-to-1. I find this hard to believe, seeing there's been so many incidences, but that's okay. What is going to happen to our Hampstead Hospital as we know it? I know everybody's concerned about the YDC, and I am too. However, there is very little help for children with mental illness in this state. Portsmouth Pavilion closed, Lakeshore closed. I have not been very active in the last few years. What other facilities do we have for our mentally ill children?
None.
So all you can take care of is 36? Don't we have a need really more for children who are mentally ill than we do for other issues?
Yeah. So there is a wait list. As you said, it's very concerning to us as a state. And if you've ever had a family member waiting in the emergency department for care, it's a pretty awful experience.
Yes, I know.
And so Today, there's a wait list of about 4 kids statewide who are waiting for a bed. Part of what we look to is Justin and his team of clinicians and safety ambassadors to guide us on how many they can appropriately accept and the right makeup of youth, so that we do maintain this period of stability that we've had for the past 5 or 6 weeks, by making sure we keep those ratios very safe and that the care being provided is the highest quality. So we too are committed to reducing the waits for care so that people like your daughter can get access to services and families can rest assured they're getting their loved one into a safe place. But we also are being very cautious in not sending more youth or a makeup of youth whom the facility can't safely handle.
When, years ago, so you can answer this, we did not accept, Hampstead Hospital did not accept New Hampshire Medicare. Is that still the case? Medicaid, excuse me.
Yeah. I can't speak to the insurance carriers that Hampstead Hospital accepted when it was a private institution. But certainly now, one of the benefits of being a state institution is that we can accept patients regardless of ability to pay. And in today's day and age, sometimes it is extremely costly. And for us to be able to accept a child who is in need, regardless of the income of that child's household, is a commitment that we stand by.
Do we take Massachusetts and Maine children before New Hampshire?
We do not. We prioritize New Hampshire youth.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chief Kelly, Hampstead Police Department. Many of you know me, some of you may not. I do want to start off by addressing a couple things. I commend most of the people in this audience. This has been a frustrating ordeal. This has been going on. Some of us from your local officials have been dealing with this for the past 2 years. Those of you who live in close proximity to the hospital, I certainly understand how this impacts your families, how your day-to-day lives, what your concerns are. Please do not misunderstand anything I have to say that in any way, shape, or form would be dismissive as to how this impacts you, because I assure you, I understand it. I have been approached on a weekly basis by residents, friends, people in the community asking me, how is this coming to our community? How did you let this happen? How have town officials let this happen? I do just want to take a moment to point out the efforts of Select Chair Warnock, Senator Birdsall, and Deputy Fire Chief Will Warnock. They have been relentless in their involvement in trying to safeguard the needs of the town and address concerns as they come up and be proactive by trying to work with members of Hampstead Hospital, the state, through this entire process. I have seen it firsthand. I assure you, they have been diligently working on your behalf, as I have as well. I would also like to take a moment to circle back on the fact that I fully understand and respect the needs of the services that Hampstead Hospital provides to some of New Hampshire's most vulnerable citizens. We're talking about highly acute patients, some who have endured unspeakable trauma and desperately deserve the highest quality of care. These patients come from all different backgrounds, but most importantly, they are children. I want to commend the staff at Hampstead Hospital. I have worked with them firsthand. I have seen what their continued efforts are like. I see what the great challenges they face. However, with that being said, I would like to address some of the long-standing concerns that have taken place at Hampstead Hospital property that I have been trying to address on residents' and taxpayers' behalf. I'm going to bear with me. I do have a couple points that I'd like to bring up. I'm going to kind of skip over number one. I think this has already been answered by the board. Ultimately, Hampstead Hospital, everything I talk about right now will have to do with Hampstead Hospital as a juvenile psychiatric facility. I have not dealt with anything as far as the youth detention center because it has not been built yet. Just so this audience is aware, in June of 2022, the state acquired the property and it started to change the type of patients that receive treatment at the juvenile psychiatric facility. Their anticipation is to operate that hospital with a maximum capacity of 72 beds. For the last 2 years, they have been operating at 50% or less. I think it's important for everyone to know that, because that directly has a correlation to the calls for services that your police department has responded to up there. It's inherent, if patients go up, the probability of calls for service go up. I'll ask this panel, which I'm sure they probably don't know the answer. Does anyone on this panel know how many times Hampstead Police Department responded to Hampstead Hospital in 2021 when it was privately owned? You don't. 21 times. From May of 2023 to April of 2024, the past 12 months, I pulled the numbers. Does anyone on this panel know how many times Hampstead Police Department has generated reports and or responded to Hampstead Hospital? 80 times. 4 times the amount. In the past 12 months, we've responded up and generated a total of 80 police reports. So, when we talk about bumpy roads or numbers decreasing or we're looking like things are better, May of 2023, we had 1 call for service up there. July of 23, we responded up there 12 times. No other single location, no other property in town over the past 2 years has required more police services than this property. I'm going to try and get to some of that for you. So I will ask the panel, once Hampstead Hospital is operating closer to full capacity and the Youth Detention Center with an additional 18 beds is operational on site, can anyone on this panel speculate as to whether or not police calls for service will increase, decrease, or stay the same? I don't think anyone can really care to answer that question because it's an unknown. I have heard a lot of different things that are being done to be proactive to try and address this, but at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is when you have highly acute patients there, they rock the boat and they create a higher volume of calls for service. That is what I've experienced firsthand, along with all the officers in the department. I do have a question for Deputy Commissioner Henn. Can you explain to the audience what some of the more prevalent reasons are as to why Hampstead Hospital staff has had to call 911 over the past 2 years?
Some of the reasons. So thank you for the question. The question was why they've called 911. One of the things to understand is that at a psychiatric hospital or at a youth development center, for that reason, there are very strict laws in place about how we can restrain and youth and put youth into seclusion. You can't just put a youth into a room and close the door and forever. In fact, it has to be ordered by a psychiatrist for a very limited period of time. So there are times when in the course of their care at Hampstead Hospital, some youth experience escalated incidents. Again, the reason that they're there in the first place is because they're acutely psychiatrically ill. Our safety ambassadors and our treatment teams are able to de-escalate the vast majority of those. I've been on campus during multiple shifts and watched many code grays where kids escalate, the team steps in according to their training, and with usually very limited intervention are able to calm the youth and work on their coping skills and have it move on. But there have been times when Chief Kelly's team has had to come in because we need to, again, follow the law when it comes to humane treatment of these kids. But at the same time, ensure that any property destruction or any assaultive behaviors, which are the two that, in answer to your question, that we most often see, are managed as quickly and safely as possible.
Thank you. So what I got out of that, and I would agree with, is predominantly when we do respond up there, they're for calls that are assaults in nature, whether it be patient on patient or patient on staff. Combative, unruly juveniles, 1 or 2 or 3 of them get worked up. They work up an entire unit. Sometimes it takes multiple staff members to control those juveniles. Sometimes they can't. It gets called in as a riot. It's not necessarily a riot, but to staff members, that's how they describe it. That's how it's dispatched to us. In 2023, we responded up there for 12 runaways. I anticipate with the fencing that has now on property That's gonna curb that, and a perimeter fence, I would hope, also will help curb that. Does anyone on this panel know how many full-time officers Hampstead Police Department has designated to patrol services? No, 5. We have 5 full-time officers who are the heart and soul of this police department, who provide patrol services to the town 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If one of those officers sustains an injury while trying to subdue someone up there, it is going to have significant impact on our police department. One of the only ways we will be able to stabilize our staffing needs, if that happens, the first thing I would be forced to do is to take the school resource officer out of the school and assign him back to patrol. When the town was first advised back in June of 2022 that the state was taking over the hospital, it was brought to the attention to the members of the Board of Selectmen, local officials, myself included. The first thing I did was discuss how we were too small to meet the needs, the first responder needs of the hospital, and then eventually, months later, it came out that a youth detention center was going there as well. Through the course of many, countless hours of conversation, the arrangement was made between state police and the Hampstead Police Department. Similar to what happens at the state hospital in Concord, state police was going to provide primary law enforcement services on the Hampstead Hospital property. They signed an agreement between us and the town of Hampstead that they would do it, and then they signed an agreement with Department of Health and Human Services, and they are being compensated $175,000 annually to provide police services. I think it's important that the town understands the dynamics of what's in play here. Because state police is inherently short-staffed, like many professions. They are down 70 positions out of 350 troopers. They don't have the bodies to do it. Please bear with me, I'll try and get through this. So state police is supposed to be providing primary services. They are short-staffed as well. The understanding and the agreement between us is essentially, if an emergency kicks off, we are police officers, we serve everybody in this community. We will run out the door and we will respond to the hospital, and we will essentially hold down the fort until state police gets there, and then they will handle it from there. The issue is state police is so short-staffed, their troopers are coming from places like Portsmouth, Hampton, Northwood. They are significantly delayed, and the Troop A barracks is in Epping, which inherently we have been handling the majority of the emergency calls that take place there. This is where I'm going to share a little bit of my frustration. Through the course of this, 2 different committees have been created in Concord to basically essentially study the impacts of this youth detention center and Hampstead Hospital on Hampstead. I was assigned to both of those committees. On numerous occasions, I have brought up my concern about how this facility currently as it stands, not counting the youth detention center, has impacted the town of Hampstead. When I looked at the calls and tried to make a reasonable request, and Marissa, you're on that committee, I requested that the town enter into an agreement with Health and Human Services and be compensated for a minimum of 1 additional full-time officer. I have been essentially, when stuff takes place up there, we'll provide services, and when there are things not taking place up there, the town would benefit and have an extra officer paid for by the state. I was trying to be reasonable. I have made that request numerous occasions, and it has continuously fallen on deaf ears, and nothing of action has taken place. Marissa, I'm going to ask you in front of everyone, do you feel as though that is a reasonable request?
So what I can say is that the department doesn't get to choose on our own how we spend money. It's up to the legislature to decide what our budget lines are. We're coming into a budget year right now, as you know. And what is critical to us is that we are ensuring that there...
Please let her finish. Please let her finish.
What I'm saying is that it is critical to us that we ensure that there is a level of safety provided on that campus, and we will continue to work with you to make that happen. It's not up to me how we spend money as a state department on something like an officer, but as you know, it's something that we need to continue to talk about to get a recommendation from the committee and work with the legislature.
I appreciate that. And I just want to point out one last piece of information that I recently learned. The town of Londonderry is in the process of approving a large privately owned adult mental health hospital within their community. It is going to house approximately 140 mental health adult patients. Part of the town of Londonderry's, let me back up. The town of Londonderry is making a request to the privately owned company that is handling this, basically to offset impact fees. And part of their request for this facility, the Londonderry Police Department is requesting funds to cover 6 full-time officers for this 140-person facility. So again, when I continue to bring up that our request was a minimum of 1, I think it's more than reasonable, seeing how we only have 5 full-time patrolmen. Thank you for your time.
Go ahead. Former representative? Excuse me.
Thank you and good evening. I'm former State Rep Dennis Green. I served 4 terms in the House in criminal justice and public safety. My last term in there, I did not see the governor come before the committee and ask us anything about this hospital being brought to Hampstead. I did see the governor the other day at a meeting as he was leaving, and I asked him, I says, do you know about the meeting tonight, next Wednesday night in Hampstead? And he said, no. So I told him, and I says, did you know that there's a child daycare just over the hill and a gun store? He says, this place is going to be built. So this is my 5th time to a meeting, and I haven't seen the governor here once. Did he come before the board? Did he come before the representatives? In the time that I was in the State House, many times I went out with Troop A, State Police, of all hours. They are very busy all the time. 95 and 93 is heavily drug traffic. They're constantly busy chasing speeding, but most of all, drug traffic, going to Maine because Maine pays more for the drugs. And I was in a cruiser where we had to do well over 100 miles an hour chasing a person. They cover a large, large area of Rockingham County, and no way can they get here in time. One question would be, how much room is there going to be for you to plan to add on to this place? Because if the marijuana becomes legal in this state, you're going to need it.
Is that a question?
Yeah, that's a question.
Okay. So Again, it took 4 years for legislation to pass, in part because of a very heated debate over how large this facility was allowed to be. And when it finally passed, the maximum number was 18 beds, really designed operationally for no more than 12 youth, but able to scale up to 18. So again, New Hampshire has the lowest rate of juvenile incarceration. As Lori Warnock said, we do not, as a department, get to decide when youth go to the Youth Development Center. It is decided by a judge in a court system. So we have every intention and every limitation to have to keep it small.
I want to make sure that the other, I'm
Okay.
watching the clock.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I just want to make sure we give others.
I'd like to know how many of our representatives are in favor of this hospital. In favor of it being built here.
You mean the correction center or the hospital?
The correction center.
It was a done deal before we even got a chance to speak about it.
Well, I think we never, well, he's already not going to run again, so we won't have that opportunity to vote. But there should have been a ballot where we could have voted on it as the people of Hampstead. I'll make it short. The last meeting I was at, I asked the hands to raise hands of how many opposed this. 95% of the people there opposed it, and nothing was done. Not even the governor coming in and speaking about it. I thank you.
Just so that we have an idea of the time left, we have an 8:30 cutoff for the sake of the school employees, et cetera. So I want to make sure that we get the rest of these folks a chance to speak. So why don't you come up? I ask you to try to keep it to the point.
I'll be brief.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Gina. I'm a Hampstead resident, and I was actually a longtime employee of Hampstead Hospital. I worked there for 15 years. I appreciate the work that is done there. And I think I left just when the state took over. So anyways, so my questions are more about the new facility being built. And my understanding was that there was going to be shared services as far as laundry and food services between the two. So how will you mitigate the risk of elopement of the residents of the YDC when every time a door is opening and shutting to share those services, there's an increased risk of escape?
Sure. We have what's called a Sally port, a secure Sally port. So, and again, that's monitored right by central control. So actually, if you look at the plan, there's a little nub that's very close to the existing facility. That's where that Sally port occurs. And that's actually where the central control room is as well. So not only do they control those doors, but they're literally sitting and watching that vestibule. And that's where staff only will move in between the existing facility to move food and laundry and pharmaceuticals into the new facility. So it's
Isn't
through
there-
a secure, and it's also screened as well.
I appreciate the security, but isn't there also a risk of weapons being transferred from the services at the hospital into the youth detention center?
So we're sizing that vestibule to have screening equipment. So there'll be metal detectors and things like that, and the staff will be able to screen and review within this. It's actually an oversized vestibule to allow that to happen, because
So
you'll
there's
have
no
large.
metal in the laundry equipment or in the kitchen food equipment that?
Anything that's, any carts that has
Fair enough.
food and trade food, and carts that have laundry and clean linen will be reviewed and scanned and searched before they enter the secure facility.
I strongly recommend reconsidering and having the youth detention facility have its own facilities, but that's just my opinion. The other thing I wanted to bring up was, Chief Kelly, I thought did a fantastic job about talking about how often the local police need to be there. But I heard someone at the front table, and I don't remember who it was because it was much earlier, saying that the YDC would not require the police because it's very self-contained and has corrections officers. However, in the past couple of years, there have been multiple calls for police to go to the YDC in Manchester. So I just want to hear about what you might want to say about that. I do think that you are going to need more police for the YDC, and I think it's egregious that the state, that the town of Hampstead has to fight to get more police officers. It's egregious. And Marissa, I think you need to fight for us. You say a lot, but you don't do anything, and you blame Lorianne, you blame Regina, but you don't go to bat for the town. So I'm asking you right now to please go to bat for this town and help us out, because you're the one that can do it. Thank you.
Vanda Solars, I live in Hampstead. I have no question, everybody else question. All I can tell you is that if you were working for me, you would be all fired. Every single one of you, because you did a terrible job. Poor planning, extremely poor planning. You know, everything that, now everybody's asking question about fencing, about that should have been done before deciding to have the children here. What happened to you? Aren't you all professional? Did you all go to school? Did you all have experience with that? That's what I want to tell you. You would be all fired.
Rebecca Gagne, I live here in Hampstead on East Road. I have had runaways through my yard. Many years ago, Hampstead Hospital has been here for decades, so it's nothing new. I am in support of Hampstead Hospital. We clearly have a mental health crisis. So I don't have an issue so much with that. My issue is with the juvenile jail, or whatever rainbows and unicorn name you want to call it, the Youth Development Center. And you keep saying that Manchester is such a secure facility, then why the hell are we moving out of there? Is it to get rid of the Sununu name so he can run for president someday? Who knows what the political run for that is. But anyways, if you just signed a $99 million contract, you clearly have money from the state. So buy your own police officers and stop taking ours and risk their safety to do your own job.
Hello, I'm Julia Forbes, and I've talked to virtually everybody on this panel. I am an abutter to Hampstead Hospital. That fence line in the lower left, that right angle corner, is on my property line. And it's going to be very significant for me to look at it at that slope, 15 feet high, right on my property line. It will not be hidden from my property. There are a number of things I wanted to say. First, to everybody here, I am one of 3 people from this town, other than those on the committee, who has attended every Senate hearing, August, September, November, October, November, and March. And each one of our representatives have been bringing up these issues very well, very forcefully, being very well prepared. The problem is not our representation. The problem is that nobody's listening. And our senator expanded the Senate hearing to include the Hampstead Hospital because of the issues. It was originally formulated only for the YDC, but she has permitted testimony and discussion beyond what was originally formulated for that commission. That commission voted against the YDC in Hampstead. I don't know why the state is set up in such a way that that commission had no authority with its vote. They heard testimony, they all made their decision, and they voted against bringing the YDC to Hampstead for a number of significant reasons, which are too long to go into. The fact that DHHS and the government, the governor, have some kind of behind-the-scenes cabal to ignore what the vote actually was at the commission is something I don't understand. Assistant Commissioner Henn has repeatedly said the decision was made. The original assessment was flawed, and I in depth went through that. This current plan is flawed from a design standpoint, and you all have copies of what I wrote on this. And the original assessment was written by the now civil engineer on this project. When I asked if there was any connection between the firm that wrote that original assessment and their participation in the project, I was told no. But here tonight, I hear that they are the civil engineers on this project, and so they did have a stake in writing that assessment. Also, I'd like to go back to the $99 million contract, which has just been signed, and point out that that's a 3-year contract. There are currently 36 patients or youth there who are being treated. That is almost $1 million per.
I can explain it. Would it be helpful to explain? So the contract that you're referring to, which today was with Dartmouth Health to provide clinical services, the reason the amount was high is because they're also servicing the 185 patients at New Hampshire Hospital and the
At the
40
same
patients.
time.
So that's all part of the same contract.
Okay, thank you very much. However, the expenses there are significant. The amount of money you've spent on plexiglass, on drop ceilings, now on the fence, and you won't even consider improving the site by adding square footage to the property to make a better outcome. That fence is going to be highly visible from East Road. We were promised that this YDC would be screened from the road and would have no surrounding impact. It's in the most visible place on this site, and now between that facility and the road, we will have a 15-foot fence to look at. I was at the meeting when the Department of Revenue Administration provided the testimony on valuation impact. They said there was no other similar circumstance where a correction facility was dropped into a neighborhood. I want to remind everybody that the Manchester facility, the state has owned that property since 1850. So it wasn't a new enterprise in a pre-existing neighborhood. The state property was pre-existing. Our neighborhood was pre-existing. The state is dropping a correctional facility into the middle of a pre-existing residential zone with family properties surrounding it. That has a very different impact on potential property values. And the Department of Revenue Administration did say to expect a loss of property value if you could see the YDC. He said that in that testimony. I was there, I heard it. And so my question is to go back to the realtor's question, who's going to compensate us for the uncompensated eminent domain effect of our loss of property value? If you have a $500,000 property and you realize a 10% loss, which the Department of Revenue Administration said was reasonable, who's compensating you for that $50,000 loss?
Thank you, Jerry.
Hi, my name is Bobby Matuzak. I am a registered nurse. I'm in a butter on Faith Road, actually where the red fence goes. That's pretty much to my backyard. It's also where the kids like to make a beeline through when they get away. Very frequently over the last 7 years. I'm also a registered nurse who worked at Hampstead Hospital, and I've been there during the code grays. You know, I'm hopeful that the fence will be beneficial to the community. I'm encouraged, just from the little bit that we heard, that the facility itself sounds like it may be fairly secure and that there's been time and effort put in there. But I feel like we're missing the important part, which is the people. So there are 3 shifts at Hampstead Hospital. And so to the best of my knowledge, that hasn't changed. And now we're bringing in the YDC. I still get emails regularly, want a job, want a job, want a job. So how is it, the reason, in my opinion, why code grades frequently happen, and I don't know the data, but I'm gonna guess it's on the second and third shift when the majority of staff are not there. This PERT team, I'm not sure what that is, but I'm gonna guess maybe is that every shift also? Is that just first and part of second? So there's a special team there all the time. So that's great, that's more beneficial for the folks that are there. But there's still a shortage of nurses, there's still a shortage of healthcare people. And now you're bringing in the YDC. How is that gonna be staffed? We can't even staff, or I don't believe that Hampstead Hospital is being staffed appropriately, and I believe that that is when the police are called. It's not because of, the staff there, they are trained well. They do know how to do restraints, they do know how to do seclusions, but you also need the right amount of people to do that for it to be safe for them and the other people. When that is not the case, that is when the police are called. So what's the plan to get the right amount of staff so that everything can work out, and maybe there would be this amicable community between the people that are living there, the facility, which is needed at least for the mental health aspect. But you're bringing people from Manchester, so are these Manchester staff all of a sudden gonna travel 45 minutes to Hampstead? Because we can't even get staff in the hospital for the kids that are already there, that maybe they're more behavioral now, and then people get hurt and then they leave right away. So what's the plan with that? Because to me, that's the security aspect. That's the biggest concern for the kids that are there, for one, but also the surrounding community. If you can fix that problem, maybe some of this other stuff wouldn't be as big of a deal. So what's being done there? So you're adding more, adding more, adding more. Where's the additional staff to accommodate that?
Yeah. You want to respond? Yeah. So, thanks for your question. Staffing is a huge concern. If you can't work in healthcare or social services right now and not be concerned about staffing. What I can say is that we've done a lot of creative things to attract and retain staff and get folks to take on shifts. Just today, Senator Birdsell was participating in one of those hearings where we were saying we need, as a department, flexibility to give bonuses to be able to compensate people for their dedicated work. The one thing I want to mention is having Dartmouth as the clinical provider at both facilities. Dr. Morin is employed by Dartmouth. One of the things they evaluated when they proposed to come here is their ability not only to attract staff, but to actually train staff and to build a pipeline, just as Dr. Morin is able to train and mentor health providers to work at these facilities and to stay in the state of New Hampshire. That's what we need to do to fight the mental health crisis we're facing. So one of the draws of Dartmouth, and I think one of the real commitments they have is toward building that pipeline further.
Can I just say one other thing though? But the problem is, and that's great and all, but there's still a finite number of people. So how are you getting the right people to come in? Because so I've not been at Hampstead for a short while now, but I did work there for 2 years as a charge nurse. And I know that during that time, there were always shortages. And that incentives to working, but then you get your staff so worn out because they're dealing with this high level intensity of these very problematic behavioral kids, then they leave also. And now, and again, the YDC, how can you possibly put more there without having the right amount of people? How is that possible? Safely possible, not just for the community, because I love my community and I'm glad to be here, and not just because I live there, but for the people that are there, it's not safe. It's just not safe for the staff or for the kids.
I want to just take one more speaker, because as I said, we all have work tomorrow, I'm sure, so if you want to
I don't want to take away from what everybody's saying, but I do have a more direct to the building question. You guys were trying too early to get to water and drainage and all of those things. I'm directly affected by whatever you build up there on the property that I'm at. All the water that doesn't go into the ponds or the wet areas below go through my backyard. So I think it's kind of crazy that this wasn't addressed in the initial plan of, is this a good site? But Hampstead Hospital sits on a hill, not quite the top, with ridges on one whole side, and all of that water is either directed straight down into wetlands or down the hill, continuing past through me and way down the hill to Golden Meadow and everything else. How is that gonna be addressed in this process so that I don't continue and the other houses in the area don't continue to lose their backyards and everything else to leach fields and everything, to the amount of water coming off when you're gonna build another non-permeable surface on the top of that hill?
Thank you. I didn't want to sit here all night without answering a question. Ken Costello, SMRT Architects and Engineers, senior principal at the firm. We're going to be submitting to AOT, so DES is going to review our stormwater requirements. We've got to meet the state requirements for stormwater management for quality and for quantity. So we're engineering it right now. We've got the geotech engineers information, and we're moving forward with that. So the state will be reviewing it as part of our AOT permit.
Is the state gonna take any responsibility for down the road off of the property when it actually clears the property? As far as repairs to drainage under the roads, culverts, and just the general drainage run that the water takes from that area?
Yeah, we're not allowed, we're not allowed to increase peak runoff. So, what's running off site right now is what we have to manage. We can't increase that. From what I understand, it all runs down and into the wetland and towards East Road and
Towards Faith Drive, yes. I got some pictures on my phone if you want to see how bad it gets.
Okay, so as I've said, we're going to do a hard stop. I hope that if you can hang out for a few minutes, if there's additional questions that you want to direct individually in private conversation, or get a business card so that you can direct them to these folks, that you'll stick around and do that. I want to thank you for attending tonight. This matters. This opportunity matters. So thank you very much for attending. Thank the members of the panel for showing up. It matters. And as you know, you can reach the members of the Board of Select. You can also reach Dr. Henn. We have all those email addresses, okay? Thank you.
But one question